Hey y'all, it's Lola the Manager, your new favorite project manager, tech junkie, and entrepreneur. This is episode 18 of Life as a Project Manager. So far in our Life as a Project Manager series, we've actually gone through pretty much every phase of the project lifecycle. And now we're at the end of our mock project, and we're going to wrap it up with what we call a lessons learned meeting. A lessons learned meeting is typically taking place at the end of a project. We use that time to identify our successes, our failures, and our areas of improvement in this project for future projects. We want to capture experiences and insights, identify what went well and what didn't, and develop recommendations for future projects. In this meeting, we'll have our project manager, you, who's facilitating the whole show, our core project team members, emphasis on the word core. So we don't need everyone that participated at some small part throughout this whole project. We want the people that were pretty much here for the bulk of it. We can't have it without our key stakeholders, the people who actually wanted this project done, and they're the key decision makers in whether or not this project was actually successful. We do want to get the input from subject matter experts because this is their zone of genius. So we want to hear what they have to say about how this whole thing went down. And if necessary, maybe some client representatives. So if you are dealing with an external company or clients for this project, you may want to bring some of those folks in just to get some insight. Or if you consulted someone on the outside for some things throughout the project, let's bring them in too. Now, as a project manager, you're probably wondering, well, how do I facilitate this meeting? There's meetings on meetings on meetings. How do I make this one work? First things first, you need to prepare. This means you need to schedule the lessons learned meeting after the project. I say schedule it no more than 2 weeks after the project is completed. Why? Because it's still fresh on everyone's mind. And when you do that, you want to make sure that you send out a sample questionnaire. When we get to the computer, I'll show you what a sample looks like, but pretty much you want to pull some information from people so that you can prepare for this meeting. After we prepare and now we're in the meeting, we want to set the tone. We want to emphasize that the purpose of this whole meeting is to get constructive feedback. We're not here to play the blame game on who did what. We also want to encourage people to be open and provide honest feedback, honest communication. We don't want people talking over each other. We don't want no one feeling like the spotlight is on them and they're at fault for something. We just want to create a safe space where we can discuss what really happened and get different perspectives and insight. Then you're going to structure the meeting, right? And we're going to get into what that looks like. But there's a big emphasis on what went well, what didn't go as planned, and what we definitely need to do differently next time. Now, there's several ways and techniques and different things you may utilize to get people to open up and divulge to get to the meat of what was going down. And some of those techniques may include brainstorming, so kind of creating a space for us to come up with ideas, or you may do a root cause analysis, and I'll show you an example of what that looks like. But it's pretty much we want to get to the root of why this thing happened. Typically, we see this when we're dealing with things that went left on the project. We want to know, why did it go left? Not who's at fault for it going left. Why did it go left? And we want to get to the bottom of that. And then we want to prioritize the different lessons. There's a lot that's going to be said in these meetings. We want to pull the meat and spit out the bones. So let's prioritize the key lessons that we have learned from this meeting and what we got to do to move forward. You're going to document everything. So you're going to record all those insights and recommendations. So remember, this is coming from that initial questionnaire that we sent out when we were scheduling the meeting. And then we're gathering stuff from the meeting in real time. And so we're going to gather all of that. And then if necessary, we're going to assign some actionable steps. So there may be things that need to get done after this, and we want to make sure we record all of that. And then after the meeting, you're going to send a follow-up report just to give people an update. A lot of times, some people don't care for lessons learned, especially if there's a likelihood that a project like this will not happen again. A lot of people tend to feel like, oh, we're just wasting our time. It's not necessary. They're not going to change things. It's always going to be like this. And so we want to give people an update on like, hey, when we had that meeting, we actually got the green light from upper management to make some changes moving forward. And you want to let people know that. And then it empowers them to continue to speak up. And while you're sending those follow-up summary reports and stuff, you want to make sure that the things that need to be implemented are implemented. And then you share that information somewhere in your company so that others can access it, because maybe you're not the one spearheading the next project, but the company is. We need to have a record of that's archived somewhere. Alrighty, so now it's time for us to go to our handy dandy computer, and we're going to look at a sample slide deck that you can present, a sample meeting agenda so you can take notes, and we're also going to look at a sample questionnaire, which you're going to send out ahead of time for people to complete so you can get yourself together for this meeting. Let's go. So let's get right into lessons learned. As always, we're going to start with our calendar invite. So calendar invite, like I've always said, depending on whatever software you're using, whether it is a Google Calendar, whether it is a Microsoft Outlook calendar, whatever the case is, you're going to always have the same type of things. You have the invitees, meaning who are we sending this invite to, which would be the key attendees or groups all involved throughout the process of this entire project. Your subject line, very straight to the point, the title of the meeting and the project, because there are so many projects in the pipeline, we want to stay uniformed. Of course, it's going to include the date, the time, and the location, whether it's a literal physical location that people have to meet in or a link. And then we're going to get to the body of that message. You start off letting people know this is our lessons learned meeting and the purpose of it, how it's crucial for reflecting on our project experiences and identifying successes and areas for improvement while developing recommendations for future projects. You give an agenda. You do not have to give the time. So I put the time limit there so you, as the person that's facilitating this and using this as a guideline, so you know how long it could potentially take. And then you're going to let everyone know that in order for us to have a productive and successful meeting, that you want them to complete this pre-meeting questionnaire so you can get some insights and stuff, and then you have a deadline in which they need to complete it. And so this questionnaire, we're going to get into it, but it's to gather information so you can better prepare your presentation and your reports for when you eventually have to send this out. As we prepare for the meeting and you complete the questionnaire, think about these specific questions so that we're all in the right space as we enter this meeting, right? And then you can give space for them to call out any specific topics that you think should be addressed. That's the reason why we provide an agenda, because there might be some things that we didn't highlight and you feel like we should. So you'll put that there. And then as always, you'll include the attachments. I've mentioned this before, but I learned this at a company in which I was in the IT department as IT project manager. And the security team talked about how you want us to add the names of the literal attachments that we attach to whatever email or invite that we send. Because if the contents were to get compromised and let's say someone hijacks it to add a different type of document, to add a virus onto the computer or something like that, when you are reading the email, you know that this attachment that is listed here is not the attachment name that I see attached, so I'm not going to open it. So that's the reason why we do that. That's our calendar invite. And then when you click on the questionnaire, it takes you to a simple questionnaire that I used AI to help me create, and it's a Google form. I love them because they're very straightforward and to the point. I like to err on the caution of making sure that the questionnaires aren't too long, but if there's things that needs to be addressed, by all means add it here, but understand that you do need to tug at people a little bit to get them to complete these type of questionnaires. There are times where you will not be able to get a questionnaire completed, or you may not even be able to get one done, like actually create it. That's absolutely fine. The other elements will still help you have a successful lessons learned. So here we're going to do the basic demographics, which is the person's name and then their role. We want to know what part of the project you're speaking from, right? Because end users may not have any type of comments on the stuff that happened way before they even got to testing, right? So we want to know their role. And then I have this kind of broken off into different sections. Each section has like 2 questions, and I give it this open-ended space for you to write your thoughts versus making it very multiple choice and here are the only options, right? So we want to know, what's your thoughts on the project goals and objectives? So to what extent did we meet our project goals and objectives? Were the project goals clear and well defined from the start, right? Very simple. Next, we're going to planning and execution. So how effective was our project planning process? What unexpected challenges did we face during execution, right? And so different team members are always going to have different insights because they may have probably come in later in the process, or they understood that there was a learning curve and so things were difficult in the planning phase. We want to know all of that. Team performance. How well did team members collaborate? Were roles and responsibilities clearly defined? Right? So this is where you're going to really get a good glimpse of how people felt being part of this project team. Communication. How effective was communication within team and with stakeholders? Were there any communication breakdowns? If so, why? This is essential. Number one thing that we're doing in every project is communicating. As a project manager, you communicate with so many people, and at times others need to communicate with each other. So we want to know, like, if the method in which we're doing daily stand-ups, or we're doing weekly check-ins, or we're sending out the progress status reports at the end of the week. We want to know if the emails, the monthly email recaps, like, we want to know, was the communication effective? Was it good? At any point did we feel like we didn't know what was going on? We then go to resource management. So did we have adequate resources, like the time, budget, personnel for the project? How efficiently did we use our resources? So this is the time where you're going to have people come out and say, like, well, we should have had 2 developers instead of 1. If we had 2 developers, then we wouldn't have went over time and this, that, and the third. And so we need to get people's like input here. Then we're going into risk management. How well did we identify and mitigate risk? Were there any unforeseen risks that significantly impacted the project? Now, people are going to tell you from their standpoint, did any of these issues that we kind of highlighted, did they happen? Were there things that were not on our initial risk management plan? Did that occur? All that will come here. We're going to go into quality. Did the project deliverables meet quality standards? How effective were our quality control processes? So here you're going to get input from the testers, the end users, and other members of the project team. Stakeholder satisfaction. We're going to find out how satisfied were our stakeholders with the project outcome. Did we manage stakeholder expectations effectively? There are different types of stakeholders throughout the project. So we want to kind of know, was everyone satisfied? And also, did we do what we said we was going to do, or did we miss the bar somewhere? Tools and processes, very essential, because as a project manager, you are using project management tools, communication tools, collaboration tools for your teams and projects. So we want to know which tools or processes were particularly helpful, as well as were there any tools or processes that hindered the progress of this project, meaning because this tool was so ineffective, we were running behind schedule because we barely knew how to use the software. So this will let you know, like, okay, this software was good, but should have probably had some more training on it beforehand, or whatever the case is. Personal reflections. So this is where you want people to highlight what was their biggest personal challenge throughout this project, and then what's the most important lesson you learned navigating this type of project. And then we're going to go into improvements. What's one thing you would change if we had to do this project again? What recommendations do you have for future similar projects? If the people that are completing this questionnaire really do their due diligence and take their time with it, when it's time to do our lessons learned, you want to schedule it out no more than 2 weeks, which means while the project is still in motion, you are creating this questionnaire. And then once the project ends, now you immediately send this out and you give people a deadline to get it completed before you even create the meeting invite. We don't want to send the questionnaire later. We want to make sure that our questionnaire is complete in its entirety. We attach it to the calendar invite, and we give a good timeline for them to complete it. You don't want to tell them, hey, they have 48 hours. Look at all of these questions. There's 12 sections, 2 questions each. So there's at least 24 questions in here, maybe 22. We want to make sure that everyone has time to complete it. You're going to get a lot of different answers. You may get a lot of NA, not applicable, because maybe it really did not apply to that person's role in the project, which is absolutely fine. And then you're going to take the responses, I like Google Form because it allows you to see responses in a spreadsheet. You could take that spreadsheet and use other software to kind of create some type of data visualization of what were the responses from here. And then from here is where you're going to now go and create your meeting agenda and your slide deck. Our meeting agenda, which is our notes, right? So this is the agenda that is going to be attached to the calendar invite. And then it's also going to be what whoever the new note taker is in the meeting, we are going to have them take the notes here. So then at the end of the meeting, it can be sent out. So it's a standard agenda notes. If you've watched all my videos, they take the same type of format. This is where you're going to put the meeting information, the attendees. In the actual meeting, you'll check it off, whoever the actual person is. Here I have the role, but understand that you are putting the literal person's name, right? And you may put the role next to them. That'd be helpful. I always operate under the assumption that nobody really knows what's going on, right? So we don't know what's going on. We don't know who's who. And to me, I just find it nice to put the name of the person and then you can put their role. It makes it easier for everyone that's going to be in attendance or who has to read this later down the line because they don't know who Lola is. Then you have your action items. This is going to be completed during the meeting. Whoever's taking notes, they'll add the stuff there. If there's any tasks that come out of that meeting, it'll go here. And then as again, you'll have the agenda. And so the reason why the agenda is kind of here, this is also like notes, because when it's sent out in the beginning, attached to the calendar invite, it's an agenda. When we are working through it in the meeting, it becomes notes. And this is where the person is going to document the different things that happen in each section. So you start with your welcome and introduction. You're going to give the meeting objectives and lay down some ground rules. You're going to give a recap of the project overview. You're going to talk about what went well, and then you create the space for everyone to share, right? You talk about areas of improvement, create the space for everyone to identify some areas we need to work on. Root cause analysis, you're going to create the space for us to dive into some specific issues that we've identified. Recommendations for future projects. So now we need to work as a team to kind of figure out what needs to be done in the future, right? But then we also understand that we cannot do everything. So now we're going to go into prioritization of those lessons. So let's vote on what's the key ones that we want to focus on. Then you go into your action items. So this is where this comes into play, where we're going to write what actually needs to get done. And then we'll have our closing remark. And so that's where we go into our slide deck, because our slide deck is going to imitate our agenda. It's a lot of repetitive stuff, but if you do it right, you won't have to do it twice. Do it right the first time and you'll have everything you need in order to just do things over and over. This is one of the reasons why we have roles like project associate or project coordinator, because there's a lot of administrative things that happen behind the scenes in projects. And if I'm so busy putting out fires and doing all these other things as a project manager, can I have someone else be my note taker and create my slide decks and pull the data that's needed? You get what I'm saying? So this will be our slide deck. Again, we have our agenda. And one of the reasons why we continuously reiterate things is because you don't know whose desk things are going to land on, right? We don't know who's going to see this. So we create everything as if this is the person's first time ever seeing this. They don't know anything about the project, the people, what's going on. And so once they read this, they will be fully up to speed. We go into our meeting objectives. And remember, this is a lessons learned. So we want to let people know that we are going to be reflecting on project experiences, identify successes and challenges, develop actionable recommendations, improve future project performance, right? So we tell them that's the whole objective of this meeting. This is not the time to play blame game. This is not the time to just bash on people. We're reflecting on the project itself. We're going to go into the ground rules where we're telling everyone we want you to be open and honest. We want you to focus on the constructive feedback, respect all the viewpoints, and stay solution oriented. As a project manager, you need to be solution oriented. People are going to start talking and we need to get to the solution. What are we going to do to resolve this? That's how you always bring it back home. You start with letting it be known what the project objectives are. Very quick. We don't need to go into a whole spiel. We're just going to say, hey, these were the key goals that we wanted to hit. during this time frame, and this is what we were the results of that. Then we're going into what went well in real time. You will click into this, right? And so we want people to tell us what went well. Another thing we're going to do is remember all that information that we pulled from the questionnaire. Here, we may have a chart, a graph, kind of show what was the things that went well in the project, right? And then we can highlight some of that here and then have the conversation, create the space to discuss what everybody called out in their questionnaire, right? So that's why you have all this empty space. Then we go into areas of improvement. Same thing. We're going to put the things that was called out in the questionnaire, we're going to put it here. And then we're also going to create the space to talk, to invite new things, or to elaborate on some of the things that people called out for areas of improvement. No one's going to write a whole thesis in the questionnaire. So this is why we have to create the space for people to discuss and elaborate on their thoughts, right? And a lot of times people are able to express themselves better verbally than they can written. So this will help them. Then we're going to do something called root cause analysis. I've talked about this before in the beginning of the video, but in the root cause analysis, those key issues that we called out in our questionnaire and the areas of improvement, we want to find out the root cause of that issue that occurred, right? So for instance, let me see if I can zoom in here. For instance, right? Let's say we missed a project deadline, right? So initially the project was supposed to finish on May 8th and we didn't finish until May 15th. So we missed the project deadline, right? And so now what we're going to do is create a fishbone type of diagram to kind of go in depth to get into the weeds of how did we get here? How did we get to project deadline missed, right? And so from there, you would kind of take this fishbone, you start at that main root or that main issue that happened, and then you start categorizing it. Okay, process, technology, environment, materials, management. Okay, what happened with the people? They lacked the skilled resources, poor communication, there were conflicts. So that's how we end up missing that deadline. Process, inadequate planning, scope creep, inefficient workflows. What about technology? The outdated software, the hardware failures, the integration issues, all of this contributed to the project deadline being missed. Like, it wasn't just the fact that Ashley came to work late or Tony forgot to use the right login credentials. Like, all of those things are very minute. There's a whole thing that worked together to create this mess of a missed deadline. And we want to get to the root of it. Other option is to do a 5 whys exam. And so we want to get the root cause by going into the weeds. And we're going to keep asking why until we have no more responses, right? So the project was delayed. Why? We were late on milestone 3. Why were you late? Because testing took longer than expected. Well, why was testing taking so long? Because we found more bugs than we anticipated. Well, how did you end up finding all these bugs? What was going on at this point? There was an inadequate unit testing. Okay, so then how did we get to the point where the testing was inadequate? We didn't have the right amount of people or staff or what? How did we miss this? Or why did we miss it? The developers rushed due to a tight deadline. Well, how did the developers even have a tight deadline when this entire project timeline was approved from the beginning and everyone says that we were all on track? Root cause, it was an unrealistic initial project timeline. That means from the beginning, the timeline didn't work. And that's why our developers were rushing and then they missed a key unit that needed to test, which is what caused them to find more bugs than they anticipated, which made testing take so long. And that's how we missed milestone 3, which eventually allowed us to delay the entire project or caused us to delay the entire project. This is a root cause analysis. And so we're not going to do this for every single thing. We're going to look at the key things, like if the project deadline was missed or if a key milestone was missed, right? Or something happened that was major to the project. We want to do this root cause and find out, how did we get there? And sometimes just asking why over and over and over can get us there, right? So you're going to do that in real time with your team or whoever's in this meeting. Then you're going to go for recommendations for future projects. So This is twofold. So recommendations for future projects that may be similar to this, right? So let's say this was something that dealt with software. This project that we're doing is a restaurant website launch, right? So this has to deal with technology. And so in the future, we may not have to create a brand new website from scratch, but we may have to do some updates. We may have to do some changes to our website. And that's going to be a project. So we want to make some recommendations on future projects. That's why I said for similar projects like this or brand new projects. So this time we created a website. Next time we may want to create an app. Next time we may want to actually do a construction project where we add on to the size of the restaurant. We don't know. So this is where we're going to kind of call out those recommendations. Now, there's a lot of things that need to get done. There's so many lessons that we have learned, but which ones do we really want to focus on creating change? Like, we're not going to be able to change every single thing at this specific moment. So what are the 3 lessons or recommendations we need to focus on? And then we'll go ahead and write that in real time. Then we'll go into the action items. So based on all that, are there any tasks that people need to complete? This is where we're going to call it, highlight it. We may not put this right now. However, whoever's taking the notes, they're capturing it in the notes, right? And then at the end of the meeting, we sync or they send me these so then I can go and update this deck. Because as you can see in our next steps, the meeting notes need to be distributed, the lesson learned report need to be distributed, implementation of key recommendations, all these things are going to be happening. So this entire deck that we're filling out in real time is going to be sent to everyone who attended and whoever are the higher powers that be. We're going to send that to them. We're going to make sure we send out the questionnaire, whatever report we created from there, whatever data visualization we have, we're going to send that. And then once we find out how we're going to implement this or make these changes, we're going to update the team so they can understand like, hey, this meeting did have value. Like all that we talked about, we are now going to make the changes necessary. And then you finish it off. You say, thank you. It was great working with all of you. Hopefully we get to work together again in the future. And then let them know all documents will be sent out by later today or tomorrow morning. And then that's that. You get what I'm saying? So that is how we would facilitate actual lessons learned. These are all the documents that we would utilize in our lessons learned. And just like that, we are done with our lessons learned, and we're actually officially done with this entire sample project. Thank you for rocking with me this whole time. I love, love, love getting into the weeds of what it looks like to be a project manager and the different things that we are doing throughout projects and how we navigate that space. Now, just because this sample project is over doesn't mean we're done with the series. I still got more life to give you. So make sure that you are commenting any questions, thoughts, concerns that you have. Give me some more video ideas. I'm taking them all in and we hashing them all out, okay? As always, I'm happy that you're here. You could be anywhere in the world right now, but you are here getting professional development with the kid. I don't take that lightly. All right. Be sure to follow me on all my socials, Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram, Lola the Manager. Yes, I comment back, but I may not hit the DMs. Okay. Bear with me, y'all. The DMs is crazy. I do want to let y'all know that I am offering one-on-one sessions where we can sit and do mock interviews. We can discuss different project ideas. And I'm also doing VIP days where we can spend a whole day kind of on your career and how to get you into project management so you can level up and be on this side of the winning team. Thank you again. Until next time.